And we are live on Facebook. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation. It's my great honor this evening to have Mr. Todd Lund join me. Todd, thank you for joining me tonight.
You're very welcome, JR.
Now, Todd, please give us a little bit of a bio about yourself. And
Sure.
Then we'll talk about how you and I have become acquainted.
So my name is Todd Lund. I come from Ocean County, New Jersey, and I went to Stockton University, graduated with a degree in economics back in 2020. Been always interested in federal politics and state politics. And I think it's important for us to understand our rights and duties under such constitutions and the frame of government we've created.
Well said, Todd. And I want to talk a little bit about the post that you put up on our New Jersey Constitutional Republicans Facebook group page, which I was very encouraged by, and I hope other constitutional Republicans who read it are as encouraged. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about you. You are an economics major. What made you decide to study economics?
So I had a teacher back in high school, very interesting, fun man who was eccentric, and I said, well, you know what, let me try out his course in economics, macroeconomics. And I said, I've always had kind of a keen eye towards politics or economics. Let's see what it's all about. So in 10th grade, I take his AP course, and I excelled at it. I loved it. It was fantastic. And he told me, well, you better come back for micro. And I said, micro? Okay. So I come back from micro, less fun personally, but nonetheless I got to do it. And then I decided, well, this seems to be working out pretty well, so let's take this into college. So I applied to go to well, I had already actually my senior year was taking half-day high school, half-day college courses at the county college, finished up there, and then transferred to Stockton University.
Well, that's fantastic. And let's talk a little bit about what comprised the curriculum and what you studied. Did you study any subjects related to Mr. John Maynard Keynes when you were in your economics class?
A slew, of course. Keynes being the, as all of the economists, most economists would state, the forefront of modern economic theory. So whether or not we like him, he's there, and we have to contend with his theories as government every day is basically running right through with his theories controlling it.
And of course, we've been talking to Dr. Murray Sabrin, who's a great friend of the New Jersey Constitutional Republicans. I hope you can talk to. I'd love to introduce you to him sometime, Todd. But of course, he was an economics and finance professor at Ramapo College for many years. He's retired now, but he's still zealous about educating, and we've been discussing his book. We'll also be discussing the new book that he has out. But of course, we talk about economics quite a bit. It's something that all constitutional Republicans are interested in and familiar with to some degree. Now, in the same studies, did you hear of the names of Karl Menger and Ludwig von Mises and the Austrian School of Economics?
About this much. Thankfully, I had a bit of a personal education before going in. But no, that is not touched on much at all. The only times we really addressed them was in a course related to the history of economics. And of course, they're more in the last, century. So they're kind of on the smaller scene there. And then we touched on it in a course that was more of an overview of different economic theories. And I was like, oh, we're finally getting to something I enjoy. And of course, the professor's a Marxist, so it's always fun for that little combative entertainment. But yeah.
Now, did you have any other fellow colleagues or compatriots in your class who thought more along the lines of the Austrian School as you have?
Yeah, I would actually say it's comprising a large minority. where many of us are going into this kind of skeptical of kind of the ideas of Maynard Keynes and the idea of, debt can just, continuously be accumulated until, into perpetuity as long as the economy just keeps growing. Throw money anywhere it works. And so our skepticism of that kind of draws us to the Austrian school. And I would say, like I said, a large minority, several of my, I would say there were only 11 of us who graduated with economics degrees in my class, of which 3 were probably Austrian school, which, I mean, is some level of hope, I guess.
Well, that's true. And you're indicative of that. But also what we learn, Todd, through your experience, and of course, the experience of students throughout the nation, is you're being taught what to think as opposed to how to think. And you're teaching the ideas of the professor immediately makes himself known as a Marxist. This is what I believe. And generally, he's going to show all the reasons why his belief system or his worldview is superior to any other. There was a time, of course, in education where the students were encouraged to think critically, meaning that they would have to use reason and rationale, and they would cordially debate their ideas one between another. And incidentally, that is also the methodology that James Madison and the founders had for the Congress in debating and using critical theory, and always going back to the Aristotelian idea of looking for the good in whatever it is that you're going to be legislating or whatever law that you're going to be creating, and whether that law is indeed commiserate with the laws of nature and nature's God, which we talk a lot about, and of course, which the Declaration uses and the founders used to entitle them to the separation, to the independence, and to the government, all of it which they created with our independence from Great Britain at that time. So with that said, you have to go on your own. You have to look at Mises.org, and you have to study men like great economists throughout the age, like Hayek and like Murray Rothbard.
Yep.
And of course, today we have fine men like John Tamny, who's going to be joining me and later on this week for an NJCRVC, as well as great thinkers like Jeffrey Tucker, who's also going to be joining me. All these men are part and all disciples of the Mises.org, of the Mises movement, of the Austrian School. But what's a shame is that you're not given the ability as a student, which you're paying good money, your parents are paying good money, or the government is paying good money, for you to learn how to think critically and look at all the different options, look at all the different ideas, look at all the different philosophies and ideologies, and then let the students decide for themselves and let them be able to articulate what they believe is best, as opposed to being indoctrinated and told what is best.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there was only really one course where I felt that there was a large array of debate and discussion that was able to be done amongst the students, where the professor was more of a facilitator of discussion. And I thought that was immensely helpful to many students, because it shows them ways of thinking that they haven't either been accustomed to or haven't been presented before. And that's a great help to anyone who's trying to engage in actual real academic rigor.
That's right. And who are some of the other some of the other mentors that you have that you've looked up to as a student of economics? Is there anyone else who inspired you and who you read?
Well, Thomas Sowell always comes to mind. His work greatly on questions of racial disparity or economic inequality, and showing that a lot of the data is skewed, or the way that they're presenting it is skewed. I think that's a great help to understand how things are not as they seem all the time. And to be honest, a number of things like the wage gap and et cetera are still propagated in my economics school. And I'm like, what are we wasting our time on this for, when it is so thoroughly debunked at this point? But you know what? If it was a reasonable debate, it'd be great. But instead, I'm just told, oh, you just go do some research on it. It's like, no. Do I get to call it out for what it is? No, you can't do that. But I would definitely say Thomas Sowell was one of the forethought thinkers in terms of economics that definitely look up to.
Yes, Todd, of course, Mr. Sowell is a tremendous economist, has written so many great books. And still at 90, he's still going strong. I see him still putting out articles and doing interviews, and he really is. And he's been doing this. I remember as a young man and watching one of my mentors and early heroes being William F. Buckley, and him interviewing Thomas Sowell. And Thomas Sowell, of course, has such a great presence and has such a great voice, and speaks with such authority and has done such research, and normally and still gives out statistics that the status quo or the mainstream media may not discuss. But of course, Thomas Sowell brings us back to reality when it comes to looking at economics from a genuine perspective. So it's so good to know that you are a student of the legendary Mr. Sowell. Now, what I'd like to do, Todd, is to share with the audience, and I'm going to bring up a share screen here, and hopefully we can bring up, let's see if I can bring up the article that, or the post that you put up. Give me one moment here. We'll get our New Jersey Constitutional Republicans Facebook group page up. And of course, you had posted a there's the comment that, or the extraordinary quote made by George Washington: "The Constitution is a guide which I will never abandon." And that should be the same words spoken and meant by every single elected official, because it's the Constitution that protects our natural rights. People will come and go, but the Constitution remains solid and firm.
Part of their sworn oath, you would think.
Here. Yes, that's right. Of course, the oath, and here it is. Swearing of the oath and keeping the oath are, of course, two different situations. Now, here is the post. You posted this on the 28th. And this is the announcement for our NJCR VC today, our virtual conversation. And here is what Todd, and this immediately caught my eye. He has a section, he has the beginning section of the Constitution of New Jersey. And of course, our present Constitution was created in 1947. So with that said, Todd, guide us through what is said here, and then we'll talk about what provided the impetus for you to want to post this.
Yeah, so it's basically taking an overview of a particular power that was given to the legislature in 1992 by the voters. There was, I assume at the time in which it was adopted, because frankly, that's a little older than I am, that they were having an issue with the governor in regards to the powers and kind of regulations that the executive branch was creating that was not within the intent of the legislature. So they invented a mechanism to try to rein in the powers of the governor and the executive branch when they've overstepped their bounds. And the particular one that I'm expressing here is in Article 5, Section 4 in paragraph 6. And it's basically saying that if a executive officer or the governor himself creates a rule or regulation that's not within the purview of the legislature's intent, they can, by joint resolution, say, hey, whoa, stop this or alter it, because frankly, this is outside of our bounds. And if they don't comply within a certain number of days, they can submit a concurrent resolution again to invalidate it entirely or portions, which is a tremendous power that, frankly, I don't believe many of our legislators even know that they have. So the particular thing that kicked this off was the governor, our current governor, Phil Murphy, has been trampling all over the rights of the legislature on very important questions of legislation and policy, and in particular about whether or not teachers should be able to be forced to be vaccinated, on whether or not other public officials should be, whether or not students can be required to have masks. Any of these kind of things are major policy questions. And frankly, I don't want to leave it to one man to make a decision or a bureaucracy. And you know what? It's not, frankly. It's left in the hands of the legislature, and they ought to exert themselves in that way.
That's exactly right, Todd. I couldn't have said it better myself. But I'll tell you that what you're saying here, of course, you're just scratching the surface with the teachers going back to work and mask mandates and all of the other infringements. And what we've talked about before is that you will not find the word executive orders in this Constitution. This is Article 5 of the New Jersey Constitution, which has to deal with the duties of the executive branch, and you will not find directives or executive orders. And of course, we've seen over 2,000 executive orders given by Phil Murphy. And this is all the result of the influence of progressivism and a repudiation of the checks and balances and separation of powers that the Constitution is initially constructed with. And this repudiation of these checks and balances has been part of the progressive movement since Woodrow Wilson, essentially going back to Theodore Roosevelt nationally. But what you're identifying is now tell me how you found this. What gave you the desire to actually read the state constitution? Todd, you're doing something that most representatives don't even do.
I know. Sad but true. So what kicked me off to the interest of the state constitution actually was, I don't know, it was a number of years ago, and I'm looking into, I'm like, how did we end up actually with the way we have the legislative chamber made up? I'm like, it seems like it's really out of line with what I understand the state constitution says. And I read it and I go, whoa, this is way out of line. So then I start reading the rest of the Constitution. You know, I stumble upon the fact that there are certain powers that other people are unaware that they have. And I was also then looking at ballot initiatives, what ones were from constitutional amendments that had been passed before. And back in 1985, they actually had rejected a provision that was very similar to this. And so I went, oh, it must not be in there. And then I took another gander, and I'm like, wait a minute. In 1992, they put it in. It passed, like, you know, a fairly good majority. And I'm like, oh, wow. So so then I went from there and went, oh, wait, they should actually be using this if they can. And so I wanted to make it known to our legislators if possible. So that would be how.
Right now, have you contacted your representatives who are representing Ocean County in the State House in Trenton? Have you contacted them? And
I have not contacted 9th Legislative District. They're on recess right now. But yes, I was getting in contact with District 1 and potential District 2's members to take care of this when I was at a recent event. But this is something important enough where it should be. The problem is that you need almost a grassroots movement to take notice of something like this to make it addressed. Because frankly, I've worked inside of a legislative office, and I know that they emails they don't like, they ignore. So as sad as that may be, it is truly the case.
Right. And it all begins with young men and women and people of any age. It's constitutional Republicans. Of course, we don't discriminate against anyone or anything, but we do encourage one reader at a time, one citizen at a time reading this state constitution. And of course, although our representatives are on legislative recess, they still are available to contact by calling them or visiting them or setting up a meeting with them. And I do know that in my legislative district, which is LD1, we have Senator Michael Testa leading the way, and he always remains accessible at all times to listen to the thoughts of his constituents. And he would be more than willing to look over this information, as well as our Assemblyman Eric Simonson and Antoine McClellan. These men are always accessible. They are interested and determined to defend the state constitution. They are constitutional Republicans, and they believe that the Constitution is the means by which our natural rights are secured. And I encourage Todd and anyone else in Ocean County, to reach out to your assemblyman and to your state senator and let them know what you have discovered. And perhaps you can lead them to the water. That doesn't always say the horse will drink, but you can at least lead them to wisdom and to knowledge. So I encourage the people to do this, regardless of where you live in New Jersey or in what state you live in. You'll have to read your own state constitutions in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and some of the surrounding states. However, this is in our state constitution.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead. I should probably jump in here and mention that a concurrent resolution only requires a majority of both houses. So right now, the Democrats are in control of the state legislature in New Jersey, and by a fairly large sum. But it's not an impossibility. There are a number of, I wouldn't go so far as to say moderate, but certainly more moderate members of the Democratic Party in our state legislature. And in particular, there may be some who are swayable, certainly in districts that are a little bit more competitive than not. For instance, District 4 or even District 7 out in Burlington County are ones that may be considerable to certainly contact them. They might be considering something like this. I think that there are people all over the state that are fed up with executive tyranny. And they would much prefer that their legislators had a say than to just let it go by the wayside. There was one state senator from Middlesex County, a Democrat. I don't remember his name. Pretty powerful member, been there since the 1980s. And he said something along the lines of, he's like, well, I'm glad this needed to be done and done by our governor, but I know it's not popular. Well, then maybe that's why you need to vote on it. That's a problem in and of itself.
Right. And along the lines too, Todd, that you present with your post and your remarks concerning the ability of the legislature constitutionally to be able to challenge acts initiated by the executive office, we read in the shortest article of our state constitution in Article 3, which I have up here. Article 3 discusses the distribution of the powers of government. The powers of the government shall be divided among three distinct branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial. No person or persons belonging to or constituting one branch shall exercise any of the powers properly belonging to either of the others, except as expressly provided in this Constitution. And of course, as we go to the legislative branch in Article 4, the very next article, we read in Section 1, Clause 1, Todd, that the legislative power shall be vested in a Senate and General Assembly. Now, I'm still looking for the governor, the executive branch there at the end of that sentence, or the judiciary, and I don't seem to find them. Can you find them for me, Todd, there in that first clause of Article 4?
No, strangely. And no, actually not strangely, almost with intent, it's not there, because it would be inappropriate for them to exercise such powers. Mingling of the branches, is what leads to tyranny, is according to many of our founders. And we ought to keep them distinct and separate in their spheres as much as, constitutionally possible.
That's right. And there was a lot of frustration, I know, with our Republican representatives, and specifically our LD1 representatives of Senator Testa and our Assemblyman McClellan and Simonson, all wanting to restrict the number of days in which the health crisis emergency, exploited by Phil Murphy for a year, as opposed to a 30-day limit on the executive orders or special directives. And of course, that wasn't even considered by the democratically the Democratic majority in the Senate by the Senate president, nor the Assembly, the Assembly leader, not even considered, because the Democrats, of course, believe in this unleashed and unencumbered usage of power given the executive branch in a perceived health crisis. And of course, unfortunately, we have a Supreme Court that believes in judicial restraint and allowing the executive branch or even the legislature to act in ways that would be considered unconstitutional, which is clearly what we've seen with the lockdown and the deprivation of civil liberties.
This Supreme Court is judicially restrained in all things necessary and absolutely activist in all things unnecessary. And we've seen that time and time again since 1966, and it is to the detriment of our people. And it is amazing, again, in a state that has a trifecta of democratic control, there is not even a consideration for passing laws in the first place to do exactly what Phil Murphy is doing. At least there would be an opportunity for accountability.
Very good, Todd. Exactly. And let's take a moment to read the very preamble of our Constitution, the state constitution adopted in 1947. It says that we, the people of the state of New Jersey, grateful to Almighty God for the civil and religious liberty which he hath so long permitted us to enjoy. Incidentally, that was suspended during the COVID-19 lockdowns, Todd. And looking to him for a blessing upon our endeavors to secure and transmit the same unimpaired to succeeding generations, do ordain and establish this Constitution. So immediately we see the actions taken by Phil Murphy and the Democratic Party in New Jersey in repudiation of the very remarks given in our state preamble.
Yeah, so specifically in the case of religious liberty, he's perfectly fine with you having religious liberty as long as you're not going to church, and that was for months. And it's absolutely abhorrent. And in case of civil liberties, that's essentially all of your rights. And so, and any of the kind of things that we get to do in a general day-to-day, the freedom to go to a grocery store or the freedom to attend schools, we freely wish to do and obtain. Any host of things that we have basic expectations for were violated, and without really just cause, or certainly at least no public hearing as to just cause. And that's, again, a further problem that was being perpetrated by this session.
That's right. And also, Todd, as we continue to read the state constitution, there's a reason why Article 1 is given for rights and privileges of the citizens. The citizens come first. And look what we read. All persons are by nature free and independent, and have certain natural and unalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. So right away, Todd, we read that we are naturally free and independent. Do you believe that the state government and that the Democrats in power, led by Phil Murphy, truly believe that the people are free and independent?
No, they believe what is mine and what is yours is mine. And they wish to continue to use that in any which way, whether it be from, excessive taxation and, controlling more and more of the economy, whether or not it's actually controlling directly whether your business can open. A whole host of things. They don't believe you're free and independent. They believe you're yours. You're the state's property, and it's their determination of how you ought to operate.
That's right. They believe that we are dependent upon their wisdom and their benevolent guidance in ruling over the people, as opposed to allowing people to make decisions for themselves. And we read this also, Todd, this egregious deprivation of the business owners, of workers, of people trying to make a living, attempting to work and make a living for their family and owning a business. Look what we have here. It says that a natural, unalienable right, which means that it's a right that cannot be disputed. It cannot be taken away. It's not even worthy of argument. It is fact, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty. Of course, we believe defending life also includes those awaiting their birth within their mother's wombs as constitutional Republicans, as the Constitution here, under rights and privileges, gives those human beings awaiting their birth, and also of acquiring, possessing, and protecting property. Now, incidentally, Todd, money is our property. We earn money through employment, whether we are an employer or an employee, and yet we have been deprived of acquiring it, possessing that money that we earn, possessing the property or the business that we have established in order to make a living for ourselves, and protecting that property. We have the right to protect the property. Yet none of this was a consideration to Phil Murphy and the Democrats in inflicting the lockdowns that they did, which cost New Jersey 30% of small business owners their livelihood. How is this possible that this information is ignored by the Democrats in charge?
Because in the greatest of all wisdom by our great and powerful governor, it's just above my pay grade. The Constitution's above my pay grade, and so, I mean, what an arrogant statement. And but I'm not surprised. None of this is surprising in any way. I mean, do they really believe you have the right to acquire, possess, property and defend it? I mean, they don't believe in anything regarding your right to own firearms, to actually defend that property. They don't believe in contracts in which actually engage in defending your property. They're more than happy to tell landlords, yeah, you can't collect money from people, even though they're living there, even though you're required to actually fix things and everything else. Yeah, you don't have to get money right now. Don't worry about it.
And of course, we see that among those unalienable rights, those undisputable unalienable rights, which we know are given by God, of pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. It's the individual's responsibility of obtaining safety. The individual has the ability to protect themselves. No greater instinct exists in human beings as God has given us than in self-preservation. We are better equipped to make decisions for our own safety than the bureaucrats in Trenton or the state health department or Phil Murphy.
Yeah, I don't understand why we shouldn't trust people to make their own risk assessments. Do they believe we're that stupid? Where we can try to determine, especially amongst people my age group. I mean, it blows me away. People my age group are one of the least likely, children are the least likely. I am amongst the least likely to have a possibility of dying from this infection or being seriously critically harmed. Yet I have to follow all the same regulations as someone who is at critical risk, people who are immune compromised or over the age of 75. It's just no consideration is given for these things at all.
That's right, Todd. And I think it's so encouraging that you've taken the time to actually read the state constitution. During the primary, I was asked to sit on a conservative committee to evaluate and ask questions of the candidates. And I was asking gubernatorial candidates if they had read the state constitution. And apart from the eventual winner, Jack Ciattarelli, they said they had not. Now, to be governor, of course, is a tremendous responsibility, but there are too many people at the local level, people who are running for local offices, who are not reading the Constitution either. It's time now to reestablish the preeminence of the Constitution, as we've seen. And we have to make sure, Todd, that these egregious deprivations of the people's civil rights, for a moment, let's imagine the government. Let's imagine that Phil Murphy and the Democrats deciding who is an essential worker apart from who is not an essential worker. every worker is essential. And that includes the person who understands that it's essential for that person to make a living, to be employed, to show up for his job, and to make a living for his family and for his pursuit, which is, of course, another attribute of pursuing his own happiness, and not to be relying on the government for extended and perpetual unemployment benefits. So this is why it's so important that we read these things in the Constitution. And don't you think that it's important for other young people and your peers to be reading the Constitution so that they see that really they are equipped, the people are equipped with the sovereignty that the founders intended for us to have, as opposed to the government officials that we elect to impose their will on us?
Yeah, absolutely. Young people are, historically some of the most determined, most energetic people who want to get out there and get things done. And yet we have, government roadblocks sitting in the way. And again, that doesn't fulfill the idea of free and independent. Young people, they want to be out there. They want to make things happen. They want to have fun. Yeah, maybe too many of them. But they want to also be able to get real things done, make things happen, whether it be their businesses or whether it be in their careers. It's very handicapping to tell them you're basically going to have to wait a year before you can go out and get your real work. Yeah, great. You just graduated from college. How would you like a government mandated recession? That sounds good, right?
That's right.
Young people and many who I went to college with in Stockton, they thought these, and many of them Democrats, thought this was ridiculous for people their age who are not primarily at risk to be forced to have the same rules and regulations applied against them as someone who is very much vulnerable.
And Todd, you're exuding leadership qualities. Of course, you were an Eagle Scout. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct, sir.
And that's a tremendous accomplishment, and one that is indicative of a leader at a young age. And of course, you're still a young man, and you have your whole life in front of us. And I've been very encouraged to see posts that you put up, and to have started a relationship with you. And it's important that we continue to tell the people that although it is difficult to read the Constitution, there are many, many different clauses, but if you read an article or a section a day, you'll become familiar with it. You'll be able to make one of the great benefits, Todd, is that you'll be able to make rational decisions, reasonable decisions on who it is that you want to vote for. And you will hold your elected representatives accountable because you will know the Constitution and you will require them, your representatives, to know as much, if not more, than you about the Constitution.
One can only hope. And I mean, that's really what the function is, right? They're meant there to make decisions on your behalf that you believe are good and necessary. And they ought to be in line with the fundamental documents, that of the Constitution, that of our state constitution, and of course hold to the principles of the Declaration. Those are paramount amongst all. Yes, we ought to consider it.
Very good. And as we wind down, Todd, tell us a little bit about the young Republican organizations that you've been with. You've attended the Atlantic County Young Republicans. I believe you also mentioned to me about the Ocean County Young Republicans. Tell me about them and the potential for growth and participation in those organizations.
Sure. So the Young Republicans, in whichever county you're in, is for anybody who is 40 or younger, or maybe it's just younger than 40. Either way, it's a large swath of people, especially an untapped demographic in voting most times. And there are a number of conservative or conservative leaning members out there in the general population of New Jersey who would be more than willing to get involved, but nobody's asked them. This is something that we noticed when we were on at Stockton, is that, if you build it, they shall come, is that we have a Republican club there, and they very much, started as a very small, minority of nothing, like 4 people, and quickly grew into a much larger organization of 15 plus. And so in terms of the young Republicans, this is the arm that really helps people get elected locally, statewide offices. And it's good to get involved with them because you actually have an ear into the ear of the representatives that you're making happen. So if you have something that you're, a necessary political vendetta, you can actually hopefully grab your representative and say something to them, and they might consider it. And that's a really, really good thing to make happen as a tool that not everyone realizes they have. So we should be reaching out to young people to help in these races. And I see lots of room for growth. So let's make sure we do that.
And you've told me prior to our conversation tonight that you're encouraged that more and more young people are wanting to know about the Constitution, the state Constitution. They want to be proud Republicans, and they want to be part of the process. And I think that is very encouraging as we look to restore the Republican Party back into the image of one Abraham Lincoln. And I believe that his message of equality, of course, it comes from the Declaration of Independence, which he pointed us to in readopting. These messages and these principles transcend generation to generation. And the Republican message is the message of equality and opportunity and the ability to work and achieve. And I'm very encouraged that you said that there are young people who are thinking along these lines now.
Yeah, and there's always this bent to say that it's only white old men who are part of these movements, and it's just frankly untrue.
Here's one, Todd.
Yes, but there are plenty of young people of all races and genders, please, that are interested in these principles, and maybe it's just reaching out and saying hello, and saying, hey, have you considered this? And people are, deep down inside, they realize that there are some basic truths that have to be expressed. And thankfully, our governing documents at least express those. Our legislation does not at this time, and that's the problem. We need to rein in such laws and rules and et cetera that are not coherent with the principles laid out in such documents.
That's right, Todd. And I encourage anyone who would like to post some information or can educate us or make some comments about the state constitution and how our elected representatives may not be defending or supporting the Constitution, to please post it up on our NJCR group page. We try to keep the information very relevant and very important for the people. And I really do appreciate, Todd, what you have put up. So now tell me, as we conclude, what's the future? What are your aspirations for the future in getting involved with becoming a good citizen? And incidentally, civics is learning your rights, which is what you're doing, and also knowing how to be a good citizen within the society, which is also what you're doing. And we encourage more people to do it. But tell me what your aspirations for the future are.
I would love to get behind helping other people get into office, and particularly in local elections, places where they're most hurting for people who actually have knowledge on their duties and rights and that relationship between citizens and themselves. You have a lot of school board elections that are determined by basically 0 votes. And all it takes is someone to run who actually has convictions about these things to win the elections. And so it starts right there. And finding those people, it can be done. There's people in the community. It might be you. And that's what we need to do. So I'm looking to help a lot of local races right now. I live in a super safe Republican area, but I have people who get elected on the same ballot that say, we shouldn't be encouraging, sexual education at the age of kindergarten, that we shouldn't be, spending or taxing us out of oblivion. And on the same ballot, someone who believes the complete opposite getting elected. It's unimaginable to me. It's an at-large election. How does this happen? And it's because of failure of education. And so that's what we should be doing is educating our neighbors. And that's what I look to do specifically.
Well, we certainly will provide you with a platform and an encouraging environment, Todd, in order to do that. And I hope to have you on again soon to talk about another topic and to be involved with what you're doing down there, and you being involved with the New Jersey Constitutional Republicans movement. Very excited about a long and fruitful relationship that you started with an extraordinary post that caught my attention, and I encourage others to do the same. And I do want to say that you do make an excellent point, beginning with school board participation, and how important it is for our citizens to be involved on school boards, getting elected to school board positions, because this is where we can make a tremendous impact on what is being taught in the curriculum and holding our educators accountable to teaching accurate history, and also the importance of the sciences. And as we said in the beginning of the program, providing an environment where critical thinking is encouraged, giving several different options of worldview and philosophy and ideology, and let the individual be able to work out in their own mind what they believe is just. And that's precisely the point of education. And I'm so encouraged that you are wanting to be an educator, and look forward to working with you. And what I would like to do, Todd, as we conclude each of our programs, and I encourage the listeners and our audience to go to our Facebook group page and see the fine nationally known guests that we are also having later on the week. And one of the aspects, Todd, of the Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation is that we are indiscriminate. We will have anyone on. It doesn't matter what you look like or who you are or what language you speak or what age you are or how much you weigh or what you know or you don't know. Everyone is encouraged to participate in a virtual conversation with me on the New Jersey Constitutional Republicans virtual conversation program. And I thank everyone for joining. And please share this video with others so that the people throughout the state and the nation, as we are seeing also on YouTube and throughout the nation with our program, and getting to know Todd Lund. And let us conclude, as we always do, Todd, with the words from Abraham Lincoln. And he said this, he said, all this is not the result of an accident. So as Republicans, Todd, we don't believe in luck. We believe that all things have a purpose. He said, all this is not the result of an accident. It has a philosophical cause. Without the Constitution and the Union, we could not have attained the result. That is our independence and our nation. But even these are not the primary cause of our great prosperity. There is something back of these, entwining itself more closely about the human heart. That something is the principle of liberty to all, the principle that clears the path for all, gives hope to all, and by consequence, enterprise and industry to all. And that same all, Todd, is the all that is also described in the Declaration of Independence, of the self-evident truth that all men are created equal. So that's an all-encompassing all that we read from Lincoln. And these are the principles by which the Republican Party can be reborn again for a new birth of freedom and to successfully lead a majority of the citizens of New Jersey and the United States. Todd, give me your last remark. You have the last word.
I'm very thankful to have to let me have me on, letting you have me on. I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Opportunities like this are not always there, and you're providing a great platform for people to have it.
Well, this will be a perpetual opportunity and platform for you, and I'm so glad to have met you, and very proud of your desire to educate and to make our Constitution great again, if you will, or relevant again, I like to say. So thank you very much, Todd. Thank you all for joining us. And remember, as we read, liberty to all. Thank you very much. Take care.